Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. I'm your host, Marianne Hickman. And listen, I'm just glad you're here. I was listening to a lot of other podcasts like you. I listen to podcasts all the time. And here's what I've kind of gathered people like you and me who listen to podcasts, there's something that I know about all of us. We want to become better people. We listen to shows to be enriched and enlightened in some way, whether we want to become a better speaker, whether we want to become a better mother, a better leader, a better father, a better family member, a better business person. Maybe we want to be entertained and have our brains stimulated by things we don't know and things we're learning in side quests and hobbies. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you're here because this is exactly what you needed to hear today, regardless of the day that we recorded it. The reason you're listening to it today is because maybe there's something in here that's exactly what you needed to hear. And this episode is especially poignant for that. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Sammie, who I met from literally a world away. She lives all the way on the opposite side of the world in Australia. And we met through just a series of podcasts and hosts. Jace, thank you. Thank you so much for connecting us. And Sammie's story is extremely real, it's extremely raw. Not everyone comes back from what she went through. And people always say, trigger warning, all of that stuff. There are some things in this episode that you're going to want to be aware of. And the reason that Sammie's willing to talk about this, about the eating disorders, about the flatlining on the table, about all of the things that threatened her life, is because she's on a mission to help people not interface with this if they don't have to. I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy hearing from my friend Sammie. And if you want to connect with her, go ahead and check out the show notes. But God bless you. We're praying for you. Check it out. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we got introduced. I'm grateful that we were able to connect with each other through the magic of technology. I mean, you're literally on the other side of the world right now.
Yeah, Australia is pretty far from the US.
I once looked on a map. I think that Madagascar is the furthest you can go from where I am without starting to come back. So if I go to Madagascar, I have to keep going to go to Australia. I remember when we
Yeah,
went to Bali, we had so many Australian friends there, and I realized how close we were. It was like 3-hour flight away.
yeah.
It was
Bali's not
crazy.
far from Australia either. Like, no, yeah, it's because it's Indonesia, so it's not far at all.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of get a feel for the time difference. It's tomorrow already for you, right?
Yeah, so 2:20 PM
On the 20th.
Victoria time. Yeah, on the 20th.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Well, the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because you have an expertise that you paid a high price to get. And I remember looking through your Instagram, I was looking through your bio, and I'm gonna get just emotional thinking about this because I mean there's no reason why you should be here, like logistically speaking. If you look at what you've gone through, and I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, I'll let you tell your own story. But when I read your story and I listened to you when we met on Zoom the other night, I was just instantly blown away. And I thought about my daughters. I've got 4 daughters, and they're right in front of their teenage years, which is when, if things are going to explode, that's when it's going to happen, you know? And what you've been able to do around true confidence. You're not one of those coaches that claims to have something without going through the experience to get it. You're one of those people, when I look at you, I feel the authenticity, I feel the expertise. And if there's one reason that you are still here on this planet today, despite all of the reasons that you shouldn't be, one of those reasons is to help other people, maybe specifically women. I don't know. It seems to me that that would make sense, but to help them save themselves so that they can bless others, and to fall in love with themselves so much that it overflows out of your personal vessel and into other people. Because I know that's what you did for me.
Yeah. That's literally my mission. Like, as you said, there is no reason why I should be here, and the fact that I am, every like cell of my being just screams that you are here to help people, and it's what I've been doing, it's what I love doing. And it's an honor. That to me is fulfillment on a level that nothing else could ever offer.
Oh, that's the thing we all search for, I think, is fulfillment. It's kind of this nebulous feeling, but we know it when we have it,
Exactly.
right? For everyone who hasn't met you yet, tell the origin story, right? Tell us where this whole thing started, why you built a business around this, and really just shared your heart with the world through this.
Yeah. So my story began as a young child, obviously. So many people grow up, you know, different family dynamics, and you never really understand what people are going through. Now, in my sense, I was being sexually abused by my uncle from about the age of 3 or 4.
Mm.
Now, I come from a very European background, so I'm Hungarian. And my grandma and my grandpa who raised me, their sense of joy and happiness really come from food. So even as like, you know, a 1 year old, I would be out in the backyard with my grandma cooking in her little kitchen that she had out there. And it was just something that always brought me joy, despite the pain that I had been going through. And obviously at that age, you're not really aware. Like my family, you know, it was normal for your uncle to go and bathe you instead of it always being like your mother, your auntie, your grandma. And so I never really could put two and two together, but I knew within me that I didn't like it, something was wrong, but I also didn't have family who taught me how to communicate.
Interesting.
Especially, you know, expressing my emotions, how I'm feeling. I was, as you can tell, I'm very loud and bubbly, and that's who I was as a child. I was just this little girl full of energy and excitement, and I loved to sing, and you know, you could never shut me up. And so I was always told as a kid, like, you know, shut up, like nobody wants to hear you. So for me, that was also when I started forming the belief like nobody wants to listen to me. And so that also played a major role as to why I never opened up to anyone about what I was actually going through. And so, of course, this food being like a source of joy, I used it to really cope. The older I got, the more I felt so depressed and disassociated with who I was. That like that bubbly little girl that I knew myself to be, I was slowly starting to completely disconnect from that.
Why the disconnection? What made that bubbly, young, exuberant, vivacious version of you unsafe to be?
Trauma. And this is what I love like talking about the impact of trauma, because it's not so much the event that really changes you, but it's how you store that in your body. And trauma is very much the disconnection from self. So when you go through something and you don't have the tools to process it, you start slowly disconnecting more and more from the core essence of who you are. And then you become this shell of a being that you look in the mirror and you don't even understand who you are anymore. You feel invisible in a world that is just full of people, and you can be in a room that is just full and still feel like nobody can see you. You
That
you also don't feel worthy to be seen. So
it's
there's
almost like, what I hear you saying is that you in a way you're desperate for help, for the pain to end, right? We're coping with these coping mechanisms through no training. They're just negative coping mechanisms. We want the pain to end, but we also don't want to be seen. It's this duality. And I know there's people listening to this right now who are experiencing that live in reality, whether they're teenagers or whether they're adults, they're still in this trauma brain.
Yep, it's huge. And then that's why I have made it my mission to really start educating people on the effects of trauma. Now, as a coach, I have always said to people, do not scale it, because I have so many people coming to me who have been like, but I haven't gone through anything as bad as you have. It's not about just how bad someone's trauma is, because trauma is trauma. We all experience that differently, and we all choose to respond to it differently, especially if one, we're not even aware of, the role that trauma can have, how it's stored in the body, and how to actually start healing from that and really rediscovering who you are at your core. It's not about going back to who you were before the trauma, it's really creating the person that you have always meant to be.
And
That, society has just conditioned you and trauma has like stuffed with you.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Listen, I'm interrupting my own show because I want to give you something. Now, you guys all want to get on more stages. I've got a free resource for you of stages that are just clamoring for guests. They need guests on a daily, weekly, sometimes monthly basis. This is my podcast database. Now, what I'm going to do is have you go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put in your information there, I'm going to send this to you totally for free. Open up this database. You're going to click through it, find the next podcast that's relevant to your topic, hit the application button, show up on their podcast, get in front of their people, and share your content. Remember, mariannehickman.com/database. Let's get you unlocked. I want to dive into that. You've got this isolation of who am I meant to be? Who am I supposed to be? What version of me makes me happy? And then you've got these two conditions on it, what the trauma has done to me and then what society expects of me. And that's a 2-point perspective that's really dangerous. But before we get into that, because I want to walk through two things first. One, your definition of trauma, which you defined as disconnect from self. And that really means that, like you said, the instances can be different. The circumstances, in other words, we can't judge. We can't point to
Yeah.
someone and say, "Oh, you didn't go through real trauma because you didn't go through what I went through." There's no possible way because, like you said, it's our response that really dictates whether or not we went through a traumatic event. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
That's crazy because people can. I guess you're right though, because it makes me think about, especially this plane crash. Did you see the one in Toronto that just happened? There was a
No, I haven't heard
Oh
about
my,
it.
it was just a couple days ago. This plane came into the Toronto airport, crashed completely upside down, and everyone walked away. Thank God. Like everyone was okay. The
Oh,
pilot did a magnificent job, but it did a barrel roll on the runway. And people are walking away from this. And I'm sure that some people will see that incident, of course, as trauma, right? And some people, like the first responders who went on that scene, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't. That's just another day at work for them. Maybe they won't come away from that as trauma. It's and this is what I have need to wrap my brain around because I think we trauma compare often.
oh yes. It's huge. It's so
It's like
huge.
a medal of honor of saying, no, mine was more traumatic than yours or whatever it is. And that to me is not a healthy coping mechanism.
No, it's very much playing into that victimhood mentality. And I know there are people out there who hate it when like you bring up victimhood, but unless you really start to recognize that you're having that mentality, nothing will ever change. You're only ever just going to keep yourself imprisoned in your own prison.
Oh, okay. We'll save that. And I want to open the toolbox in just a minute. But before we open the toolbox and of the brilliance that you have, and guys, if you're listening and you have been through anything that you have perceived as trauma, I call it trauma with a capital T, like a traumatic event, and trauma with a lowercase t, where maybe it's not a traumatic event, but you still experience trauma because there's this disconnect from self or anything less than nurture, is what I've come to call it. Hang on,
Yeah.
stick with me because I want to have Sammie explain the tools that are real and the tools that are usable and the tools that are implementable. But before we do that, Sammie, I want to hear this story of where it went to, because you went to a place where food was the only sweetness in your life. And so then it was overindulged and then it swung the other direction. Walk us through that history.
Yeah. So, as I said, throughout childhood, I developed an eating disorder, which I was completely unaware of, but it was very much binge eating. So, to cope with my pain that I kept carrying throughout, I would just eat and eat and eat and eat. it was only that source of joy, but it was only that source of joy in that moment. And then that happiness would go away, and then I turned to food again. So that happened throughout my whole childhood. And then I was bullied in primary school, bullied in high school. And at the age of 12, I stood on the scales and I weighed 120 kilos.
And I have a converter open on my computer because I had to do the math here. My
Did you use
I
pounds?
did. My husband knows it like that because he's a big CrossFitter, so he convert kilos to pounds, no problem. But for those of you that are listening that are like me and you need a converter, I did the math. 120 kilograms is 264 pounds at the age of 12. Oh, and how
Huge.
tall are you?
I'm quite short. So at 32, I'm 163 centimeters tall. So I would have definitely been a
Okay,
lot
hold on.
shorter
Let me
then.
centimeters. I got to do the conversion. Centimeters to
5'3" roughly.
feet. Okay, how many centimeters is that again?
163.
163. So for those of us that aren't as fast as Sammie, that's 5 feet, 0.01.
5 feet. There you go.
And so to
Quite
be
short.
264 pounds at 12, so maybe you're not even 5 feet tall yet. Hopefully, for those of you listening, that paints a picture of the scale of what we're talking about here, of the scale of the result of how long this has been going and how deep this was.
Oh yeah, like I look back and I'm just like, wow, like everyone who like knows me now has seen me, like just they can't believe that that was ever me. But things did take a dramatic turn. So 2 years later, it was my 14th birthday. Now, unfortunately, I was staying at this uncle's house, and he decided to take it one step further and raped me. Now, this completely changed how I viewed myself again, but also food. So, food was now not something that I found joy and happiness with, it was something that I was no longer worthy of. I felt so violated and disgusted in my body, and I had never felt completely disconnected from something that I had to live in. And so I started to starve myself. I abused laxatives. I was lucky if I was only drinking plain black coffee every day. I got to the point where I was scared of water. I became so obsessed with that number on the scale because, again, when you develop an eating disorder, or I mean, even any addiction really, you're just seeking some sense of control because your internal world is so chaotic.
Mm.
And it's like, if I can find some sense of control in my life, then everything's fine. It's just building excuse after excuse to convince yourself that you're okay, and you very much live in denial. And that denial had me flatlining 6 times.
Oh, that's pronounced dead 6 times.
Dead. Yep.
How do
I
you
have
even?
had okay, doctors still cannot explain it. I had doctors very much come into the room and tell me straight to my face, like, you should be dead, at least in a coma. You're so lucky to be alive. I got told before my 18th birthday that I wouldn't make it. And every year since, they kept telling me, you won't make it, you won't make it, you won't make it. And surely I did flatline or got pronounced dead 6 times, but by some miracle, I am still here. And this is very much why I know I'm here for a bigger purpose than I could ever imagine.
I've seen the pictures on Instagram that you've posted, and you know, Sammie, I've met people in similar situations and they have not yet escaped the addiction. They have not yet escaped the trauma, and they are still fighting it back and forth and yo-yo up and down. And to look at you, you're right. No one would ever know. The reason I admire you so much as a human being is because you have proved the statistics wrong. You have become the anomaly, but not only that, the anomaly that can be repeated. You break what should be or what statistics say should be. I mean, when I look at that picture on social media, I saw that image. I could almost see your spine behind your belly button.
Yeah.
It was insane.
That it was that bad. Like, for anyone, if you want to picture something, it very much was the definition of skin and bone. Doctors didn't know where my organs were. They had shrunk that much. Obviously, that has left me with some physical consequences.
Yeah.
I actually one day woke up from the waist down paralyzed, and they told me that I would permanently be in a wheelchair by the age of 25. So that was when I was 21. And again, there's that part of my spirit that's like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not living like this. And again, you get told that it's impossible, but I'm like, want to make a bet. And there is just something within me that just keeps wanting to prove that the body, the mind, and the spirit, when you really start to create this harmonious balance and you really look in internally and you do the work, miracles can happen. Like, I know there are people who are really skeptical about that, but I literally am living proof that miracles can happen. And I mean, it wasn't easy. I'm not going to say it was easy to try to get back into walking. I even in the beginning, I was kind of limping, and, people would be embarrassed to walk with me because they'd be like, you walk around like a retard. And like, for me back then, it really did also like really make me disconnect more and more. So it was like, I know I'm doing good, but then there was always these things from the outside trying to keep tearing me down and tearing me back. And what I noticed was the more that I played into that victim mentality, the more that I listened to that, the more pain that I was in. I was bedbound for years. And then I really had to start looking at the trauma, looking at what beliefs I was taking on board, and looking at what I was choosing for myself.
So,
And when I really
go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, when I really had the courage to be like, I'm saying yes to me, and I know this isn't gonna be easy, but I'm gonna take it one step at a time. The shift, like in the trajectory of my journey, was just so powerful.
I want to know how bad it got. You mentioned on the phone when we talked before, did you say you were 56 kilos? When you were at your lightest, what was your weight then?
No, so I went down to
24
24
kilos? That's
kilos.
53 pounds. Oh my gosh. What would you say that was your lowest point? Not on the scale. I'm talking about emotionally in your heart and in your spirit. Was that when you were at your lowest?
Yeah, that was very much, I had tried committing suicide numerous times. So there are definitely times that I had been at rock bottom for a long time. There was a point where I know that there was no sinking any lower, and it was either I'm gonna die or I'm going to somehow, by some miracle, shift my life and create something more beautiful and meaningful from it. And it took me over a decade. I, for a very long time, still didn't have the answers. The hospital systems here, as I'm sure it might be around the world as well, where they focus so much on just weight and calories and food and numbers, and you go outside and then that's all you start to focus on. So before I had even gone into my first hospital admission, I didn't focus on numbers and weight. But it was really once I got in there, I then started to learn things off other girls who were suffering. And then that's when that part of my control stepped up into full force. And trying to break that cycle was hard because I still had no idea as to why I needed something to cope. Like, I still wasn't aware at the time how my eating disorder developed in the first place. Like, I knew that I had gone through things, but I was never taught the role that that pain can play. And it
And
wasn't until somebody, like, told me and showed me that that's when like, I was able to finally start to work with it and really, I mean, we always have dark and light. It's really about embracing it, accepting it for what it is, and being able to detach from that kind of like an energetic cord, like the power that you give that, you have to work on no longer giving it that power. And once you start working on that and the less power you give it to the point where you give it no power at all, that's when you truly set yourself free. That's where self liberation really comes into play.
now I love what you said when we were chatting before. The point where I felt like we connected so powerfully was when we were talking about all of these addictions, whether it was the overeating, whether it was the anorexia, whether it's pornography, whether it's something else that you might be dealing with if you're listening to this. What Sammie is so expert at is this moment where we realize that these mock battles, now they're real battles. I don't want to downplay that at all. These are very real battles. But these
Mhm.
battles that we think we're fighting are symptoms of the deeper war that is going on. The anorexia is the symptom. The addiction to soda or video games or pornography or the overeating, these are all symptomatic. It's what Sammie's saying. It's the why behind it. And Sammie, what happened? How did you learn this? Was it some brilliant nurse who also knew to ask these deeper questions? Did you meet some kind of a shaman or a guru along the way? Like what happened?
No, I actually had a woman reach out to me. She, I think, had been following me and my journey for a little bit. Um, and when she reached out, she very much was like, I think I can help you. And, the more she started to build my trust, the more I was able to kind of tell her really what had gone on in my life. And she was able to show me just the part that trauma plays and how, as you say, everything else is just a symptom. And then all the things they want to throw at you, the drugs, the this, the that, they're just band aids. And until you really start to look in and do that work, nothing will ever change. You'll find something else. It's like when sometimes people do recover from an eating disorder, but then all of a sudden they go on this obsession about like healthy eating and exercising and all of that. And again, it's just like you're going from one thing to another. Like the focus isn't really about going in and reconnecting with who you are at your core. There's just something else externally that you're so focused on. Because I can tell you now, when you are like internally focused and you are embodying the absolute truth of who you are, none of that matters. You honor your body, you listen to its wisdom, you know what you should and shouldn't be doing, and you just naturally live life like that. And that's really what each and every single one of us are here to do. But a lot of people are so disconnected from themselves and their body that they don't pay attention, they don't listen. And then, we have these excuses that, oh, life's too busy, this gets in the way, I can't do it, I've got this. And it's just like, you've got to cut the BS. Like when you start looking at it, that's when you also start to learn how to cultivate more balance in your life, how to really make that work and make things flow. And then you find that you're not stress free and you can handle things in a much better way, by responding and not reacting to things. Generational trauma is like a huge part of that too.
Oh
So it's not
yeah.
only the stuff that we go through as an individual, but the stuff that gets passed down to us.
So I'm curious, what was when you were working with this I'll just call her an angel because I can't think of a better word for this person that came into your life. first of all, I'm shocked that she was able to earn your trust, not because of you, but because you've experienced trust being violated so much. I mean, that must have taken so much persistence and outpouring of love to bridge that gap. But also, I'm curious as to what you discovered about yourself. What was, I mean, even like you were saying, the overeating and the undereating, this is all symptomatic, but even like you said before, you're saying that the circumstance of the abuse from your uncle, that was symptomatic too. What was the trauma that you uncovered?
Very much you really come to realize that you are the creator of everything. Like, we all go through experiences, but how you choose to learn, evolve, and grow from that is where your power lies. You can really let that defeat you. You can let it really become that disconnect. So you never really get to truly embody who you're meant to be. Or you can start to really cultivate that one self awareness. Like, self awareness is huge. Unless you really start to become aware of what's going on, what's happening within your body, what are you taking on board, and how are you showing up? Like, everything comes down to choice. And you are at the center of that. Nobody else can tell you how to live your life. You are that person. And when you really start to remember that, that's when you have choice. As I said, it took me 10 years. I knew that I could make choices, but I was too scared. There was so much that was stopping me, whether it be like my limiting beliefs, whether it be fear. I mean, I had gone through another traumatic experience. So when I was 14, I had actually been seeing someone at the same time, because obviously I grew up really quickly. And he was also raping me. And when my uncle had raped me on my 14th birthday, I'd actually fallen pregnant. And I had no idea whose baby this was.
Oh my gosh.
And so I knew I had to go to my boyfriend and tell him, hey, I'm pregnant at 14 years old. And he was a drug addict. He was very abusive. And he beat me until I was black and blue and miscarried. I had to run into the bathroom. Luckily, there was like one of those old school bathrooms that have a lock on the door. And I laid in that bathtub for about 2 hours, just covered in blood,
Oh,
feeling like every bone in my body was broken. And at that point, it was one of those times where, again, you question, can things get worse than this? And it did. Because instead of like really having that courage to choose myself, I kept really playing it small. I mean, walking out that door that day, he also threatened that his brother, who was a hitman, would come and get me one day and I wouldn't see it. So for me, I carried that fear throughout my life. It was also one of the big reasons why I truly believed I kept myself going back to hospital. Because in hospital, there are so many people there. You are more safe and protected inside than you are in the big outside world.
whoa. You just dropped a big bomb. It's this, and I relate to this because I understand I call it an addiction to chaos because of the payoff,
Yeah,
right? You're going to the one place you know that you can be safe, but you have to put yourself in a chaos is the lightest way to put it, but in a terrible situation in order to get that.
exactly.
That's a whole new level of ownership because anyone would look at your situation and say, obviously, she was the victim here. She was the one that was beat and she was the one that was abused. And she was, yes, obviously, in a court of law, she's the victim. But what you're saying is even in that choosing out of victimhood, that's like Viktor Frankl level stuff. Seriously.
Exactly. And that's what you have to realize. You have to realize the part that you play. You can sit there and play the blame game all your life, but until you really start to take accountability of what you're creating for yourself, things will never change. And it took me ages to be like, "All right, I need to let go of this fear." Like, it was huge because that was my life. And as much as I, wanted to die, I didn't wanna die. I just didn't wanna be in pain, and that's what you find with a lot of people who are going through depression or anyone who is really disconnected from themselves. It's not that they wanna die, they just don't wanna feel it, but unfortunately, the only way to get through it is to really go back and feel that, to look at it and understand what you've created for yourself, how you can forgive yourself for that and really set yourself free from that so you can move forward
So what did
instead
you
of
feel like you had to forgive yourself for? Because it seems to me that anyone listening to this would just be like, "You didn't do anything wrong." What what was it? What was that like for you?
I get it. Like, I have had a lot of people be like, "It's not your fault, blah, 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 blah." And, there is obviously, like, it's not like I told him, "Hey, go do this."
Right.
But again, it's one of those things where I wasn't taught as a kid how to raise my voice. I did develop my own beliefs that, hey, I can't talk about anything because, people like it when I shut up. But you get to a certain age, especially when you have that awareness. So, again, when you're a young child, I'm not saying that you have the awareness and ability to do this, but
No, we don't.
but when you really do start to hit like adulthood, your healing is very much your responsibility. You make your own choices. This is your life, and you choose how long you want to hold on to that pain for. So I really had to start looking at what I was allowing because that was my experience. Yes, but as you say, you get addicted to the chaos. So there was that, but then that was what I knew to be my normal. So I would get myself into future relationships where I was still physically abused, I was verbally abused, I was emotionally abused. And that was, I guess, that was my choice. So it's not like I was a victim because then I got into more, abusive relationships. It was I was choosing that for myself. Unconsciously, maybe yes. But this is why really being educated on how you get to create your life and how your limiting beliefs and all of that sort of stuff play into this. Because when you come to that realization, you realize that you have the power to change the trajectory of your life. You don't have to sit in this victimhood mentality and be the victim all your life. Like, and that's what I love about it now, especially when I do go and speak. I very much speak in a third person because I am detached from that version of me. I'm no longer that person. Like people say, oh, you can't change the past. Like you always carry that with you. It's like, yes, like one of my sayings that I do have is forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it changes the way you carry it.
Mm.
And for me, that's huge. And when people really start to let that sink in and understand what that means, it really means, again, not giving your power away to that person, that event, that situation, that pain, whatever it may be. When you can really take your power back, when you can release yourself from that, and do that work, that's when forgiveness happens. It doesn't condone what anyone did. I'm not saying that what he did was right because it wasn't. But at the end of the day, again, going back to you having that choice, you get to keep yourself trapped in that prison. Because at the end of the day, he's not hurting by it, but you're hurting yourself.
It's the scar that never heals. It's the perpetual victimhood. And not only you're right. It's not only what I hear you saying is it's not only him winning over and over and over and over again, right? It's not only keeping the suffering, the optional suffering. JC and I were talking about this. The suffering that we experience from a point of pain is optional. The pain is not always optional. But
Exactly.
prolonging the suffering means the perpetrator continues to win, and it also means that we seek out unconsciously, like you said, on other perpetrators.
Yep.
So open this toolbox for us because I know there are people listening to this. I've kind of been telling people that I'm having this podcast with you, and I've been so excited for it. So people are waiting for this episode. Tell the people that are listening to this, especially the one man or the one woman that's listening, that's living in the pain right now, that is open to ownership, open to accountability, and open to saying, if I'm the common denominator, then I'm the solution. Share with us the toolbox. How does someone go from the depths and the ugliness that you know all too well to where you are now, where you've got a beautiful energy, the smile is on your face, it's authentic, it's not pretending that it didn't happen. It's it's like you said, it's how you carry it. Open that up and teach us.
Yeah. So again, one, having that awareness is obviously huge. But I think the second and probably the most important thing is being radically honest with yourself.
Tell me what that means.
When you live in denial for so long, you create that habit of playing it out like it's nothing big. And so being radically honest is actually being like, hey, this actually did happen to me, and this is how it actually has made me feel. Not, oh, yeah, that happened to me, but I'm fine. I've moved on in life. Like, don't care about it now. Kind of like really dismissing it because, again, you're just suppressing it. So the biggest thing is to really be honest. And sometimes that's hard because it hurts. And that's the whole thing. Everybody wants to run away.
Yeah.
I ran away for 10 years because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to be honest with myself. I wanted to pretend that my life was okay.
Do you think that some people confuse that with staying in victimhood? This radical honesty of, yes, it did hurt. And I think some people shy away from that because they think that is the same thing as victimhood.
Duh. Do you want to just elaborate that on a little bit more just so I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
get a
So
better understanding?
yeah, and for those of us that have been in the personal development space for a while, this can be really challenging because when you and I as coaches and several other coaches, when we live in this world of personal development, we like the way it feels to be on top of the world, and we like the way it feels to be untraumatized. And sometimes I know for me that I have probably masked some traumas that I can say those things like, "Oh, it doesn't affect me. I'm okay," because I don't want to live in victimhood. I don't want to say I was the victim of something. It did feel bad, so I will gloss over it and say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." When in reality, I'm not. And the reason I don't want to address it is because there's a fear. There's a fear that if I say, yeah, that actually really was painful, or that was a mistreatment of me, or that email was it did really hurt me. There's a fear of being honest and saying if I think that way, then I'm a victim and I'm just going to attract more of it. So I'm going to gloss over it and pretend it didn't hurt.
Yep. So there's definitely a difference. Victimhood, it's one of those tricky things because, again, you can be either conscious of it or unconscious of it. But really, when you take accountability and you accept that, hey, this is how I feel, but you don't allow yourself to sit in it, you don't allow it to control your life, you can sit there and be the observer, as I say. So it's,
Mm.
don't embody it, but take yourself out, literally as if you're kind of like facing yourself as another person. So I kind of like, sometimes when I do it, I feel like it's almost an out of body experience where I see that pain for what it is, but I don't see it defining who I am.
So when I hear you say that, it reminds me of something my husband told me. And he said that anger is always a secondary emotion. Anger comes because of sadness or betrayal of, or because of some primary emotion. And what I hear you saying, and tell me if I've got this right, is the radical honesty that you're talking about is acknowledging the primary emotion, acknowledging there was betrayal, there was sadness, there was hurt, But the victimhood is when I transform that into anger. When I'm radically honest, I skip the secondary emotion. And when I'm in victimhood, I perpetuate the anger and finger pointing and blaming and all of this. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with anger too is that it is also a secondary emotion to self-love. Because you
Really?
can yeah, you can love yourself enough to be angry. Because again, it's one of those things where we're creating that choice where if we don't put in stronger boundaries, if we don't respect ourselves enough to be like, "Hey, like, I would like if you spoke to me like this instead of, yelling at me," or whatever it may be, we can get angry as a form of self-love. It's like, I love and respect myself enough to know that I do deserve better. And then it's your choice to either have that tough conversation with someone or walk away because whatever this is, it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. So, okay, you say step one is radical honesty, acknowledging what happened, acknowledging how you felt, more importantly, about what happened. What comes after that?
No, then it very much is intention and action. So then you really have to intentionally be like, okay, what choice am I going to make? This is obviously where your choice plays a part. You have to then really ask yourself, does the person I want to embody or the version of myself that I want to embody act like this
Mm.
and make those choices, or does it not? It was even recovering from my eating disorder, it's very much the same. You get, I mean, triggers is a word that people hate.
Oh, it's been
That people
overused.
exactly, right? I honestly hate like the word triggers only because they are literally your gateway to healing and people just want to be bubble wrapped. That's the other big thing with society
Ah.
is that we will just bubble wrap people and then people remain stuck. So I very much am of the mind, embrace your triggers because it literally is showing you what needs to be looked at. So even when I was
Mm.
recovering from my eating disorder, going back to choice, it's like you can't tell other people. There are so many people out there who are just like, no matter what form of eating disorder really, will be like, don't have this food in the house, it's a temptation or a trigger or something. But it's like you can't dictate other people's lives. They're just because you're going through what you're going through, there's a part of you that is choosing that. And once you have that awareness, you really have to be of the mindset, and again, shifting perspective is huge,
Mhm.
where you're like, okay, I need to embrace the trigger. So when I am triggered, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I being triggered? And really dive deep into it. This is where the why comes out to you really get to the core. Once you have that core understanding, it's honestly like this weight just lifts off of you and your life also starts naturally shifting in a different direction. It was like my journey, like, there was no, like, pinpoint thing, like, this is where it is, then this, then this, then this. It
Mhm.
happened so effortlessly, but it took a lot of work and so many triggers. But
So
I could never dictate what other people's lives would be like. I just had to face my own stuff as it come up.
well, and that's why I wanna get to this 3rd point that you alluded to earlier of what does it mean to be Sammie, the way Sammie likes to be Sammie, and then we've got this interpretation of what society says I should be and what the trauma says I should be. How do you sift through all that? It's so much.
It is, and I guess this is why I'm grateful for the journey that I've been on. I honestly wouldn't go back and change anything about it. People
So
might
you're
say
hang
you're
on,
crazy,
hang on.
but
You're telling me if I had a magic button that said you won't have to go through what you went through, and if you push that button, your life would be erased of those traumatic experiences, you wouldn't push it?
no, absolutely
Oh
not,
my gosh.
because it really has been a gift, and I know people. might not see it that way depending on what perspective they have on it. But for me, it's been the gift to be able to really deeply connect with other people on levels that most cannot. I have that empathy, I have the tools, that knowledge, the wisdom, but not only do I get to help people, I feel the most authentic, and that's how I choose to show up. There unfortunately is so many people out there, you know, you see them on stage, you see them on social media, and they're really just not authentic. You can feel it in their energy, and it just feels icky, and that's what I don't like. It's, you know, I'm not saying I'm perfect because nobody is, but you're always going to be faced with stuff in life. But when you, I mean, even working with me, like, you gain so much tools and knowledge that, you know, I've never had a client like coming back because they need more work. Essentially, like, they just are so confident within themselves with what they've now gained that they're able to then move through life and show up so differently. And they trust, and trust is a big thing. It took me a long time to also trust myself, let alone other people. But
Yeah.
again, it's one of those lessons that I think a lot of us can learn in life. And the more you begin to realize that life happens, there will be people you trust, you will get betrayed, but again, it's how you respond to it. If you react and be like, "Oh, this son of a, you know, done this to me and done that to me," and you go back to playing in that victimhood, you're back to keeping yourself in a prison. The more you can, there's a quote by Rumi, but I love it, but I can, for the life of me, never remember it off by
I
heart.
know that feeling.
But it's very much about letting, like, that pain crack your heart wide open more and more so more light can come out. And that is very much how I view myself and my life. Like, I have let my pain become my purpose. And I use that to my love really to just overflow into the lives of others, to really help them and guide them, and, you know, give them the gift of just being unapologetically themselves, because who really wants to just stick to society's standards? And, you know, as they say, comparison is the theft of joy. And unfortunately, like, that's the more negative side of social media, because people will, you know, put themselves out there, you know, in bikinis and getting all these surgical cosmetic things. And unfortunately, there are so many young girls, especially teenagers, who look at that and think, "Oh, they're happy in that photo. I have to be like that in order to be happy."
Yep.
And it's so detrimental. Like, that shit has to stop. Like, and again, when it comes to young kids, that's when it is the parents' job. So I have worked with a lot of parents, and it is one of the fields that I choose to work in, because parents really need to start understanding the pivotal role that they play.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
none of this, like, you know, I can't control them, they're this, they're that. It's like, no, like, from a very young age too, you need to start really building their resilience and their confidence, because confidence has nothing to do with what you look like, and confidence is built over time. And it's really, again, connecting to the core of who you are and just showing up authentically and not giving a shit about what anyone thinks. Like, live your life on your own terms. We are here to live our individual life. Like, you will always be your first priority, and if you're not, you need to start putting yourself first. Don't care if you have kids, don't care if you have partners, whatever it is, you come first.
You know,
Like,
I
and
I want to highlight what you just said, because I got to be honest, I found a journal today.
oh,
It was one of my kids' journals, and I won't throw them under the bus. I won't say who it was. I think it was written a long time ago. It was a journal that said, and I don't know if they were summarizing a book or writing their own thoughts, but they said, I want to be really wealthy so that I can impress other people, because if I impress enough other people, then I'll find a partner that will love me so much. And it made me think of what you just said, because we if comparison is the thief of joy, then joy is the thief of comparison.
Exactly.
Because if we're joyful enough, then we don't compare. And choosing ourselves first, sometimes people call that selfish, right? And I think they're mistaking this selfishness for personal love and personal joy, because if I want to be big and wealthy to impress other people, then that's not choosing me, that's just choosing them. That's choosing their joy. They must be impressed by me. I'm choosing them again. And choosing myself means I choose my joy without the comparison, whether that means I get a Ferrari or whether that means I get a Toyota. It doesn't matter. It's whatever I feel joy in. And it doesn't have to match
Exactly.
society's standards.
Nope. And you're 100% right. And that's the thing. We always, well, a lot of people tend to seek that external validation because they put, you know, I'm going to be happy if this and that. When
Mhm.
honestly, I can tell you now, you'll never get the ultimate happiness unless you're truly living the life you desire that is within here. That is not like trying to please people and, make sure you're successful because this person will then like you and, then you'll find the love of your life. Like the greatest love you will ever have and you could ever gift is that of your own.
Mm.
There is no stronger love in the world. And then
Ugh.
once you embody that, you don't even have this thought of, "Oh, I need to impress," or, "Oh, I need to be somebody else in order to be liked and accepted." That I think that's one of the biggest things. People have a problem with the need to be accepted.
Oh, we do.
But ag but again, like, the only person who needs to accept you is you. And when you do, that's when, like, naturally, like, not everybody in the world is gonna be for you. Not everyone is, like, gonna love you and, froth over you. There will be people who hate you or dislike you, whether that be because you've got blonde hair or black hair or you're short or you're tall or, you've got curves or whatnot. There are always gonna be people out there who judge you. But if you really are so grounded in who you are and you become confident and know that nothing can really bring you down other than you accepting those comments, then like that literally is the definition of self-liberation. That's literally my mission to get other women too. Because you shouldn't have to keep going through life. I mean, there are so many people in their like 40s, 50s who are still, scrolling TikTok being like, "Oh, I wish I had that life. I wish I had that." But it's like, what are you doing right now to create the life that you desire? Because right now, all I see is a woman sitting on her phone just dreaming that, that could be her life.
Way to call it out. Oh my gosh.
Like, time to wake up.
Okay, Taste, I wanted to talk about the journal that you created, because you created a resource that you're giving to everybody. And I love it when I have beautiful friends come on the show and they have something tangible, real, actionable to help people. Tell people about the journal that you've created and more importantly, where they can find it.
Yes. So I love putting my time and energy and everything I can into Workbook. So I do this for clients, but I also do it as resources that I can give to people to really start helping them. Like, one thing I hate is when you do sign up for something and it's really not actually helping you. So I created a workbook called How to Build a Better Relationship with Yourself.
I need this,
Um,
by the way. I need to put myself through this again.
and really the intention is to really dive in deep to get to understand you at your core. Like, I am not a surface level woman. Everyone who knows me knows to expect deeper level stuff. And this is what this workbook really provides, like thought provoking questions where, again, if you really invest your time in it, you'll start to understand yourself more. And again, once you have that understanding, you then really know that you have choice. And then you get to decide what direction you want to go in. You could complete the workbook and be like, I'm just going to stay in, victimhood and I'm feeling safe and comfortable here. or you can be like, hey, I actually really enjoyed this and I've learned a lot about myself and I've got more awareness and I know what steps and choices I now want to start making.
Okay,
So
I need to put myself through this because I just asked ChatGPT to interview me, and it said I was a people pleaser. So I've got to figure that out and download your book and figure this out. Tell us, and I'm going to put the link that you're about to share in the show notes. So when you listen to this, just go to the show notes wherever you're at. You'll be able to find it there. Sammie, where do people find this book?
so it's just a downloadable PDF book.
Okay.
So there's no hardcover version. So I will give you the link to that, and yeah, that will
Okay.
all be in the notes.
Okay, well, I'll put it in the show notes. Sammie, if people want to work with you, maybe they've heard you on another podcast, maybe they've seen you speak. You're about to go on another speaking circuit, which I'm so stoked about because you're saving lives, not just blessing them, that's saving them. If they want, do they have to be local to you? Do they have to be in Australia, or do you work with people remotely? How do people find you?
No, I work remotely, so I very much do my coaching online. Unless, of course, you happen to be in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, then I'm more than happy to catch up in person. I love person-to-person connections, but this is the gift of technology. So I can also give you a direct booking link where people
Okay, good.
can book a breakthrough call with me. Um, and then we just kind of discuss where you're at. There's no pressure to work with me. It's really just getting to know each other, where you're at on your journey, and figuring out whether or not working with me is right for you or right in this moment in time.
I love that. And I feel that from your heart. And listen, if you're listening to this and you feel this like vibrational energy that's pulling you towards Sammie, I would say make a leap, jump on. And the reason that I do that is because Sammie and I, even though we haven't known each other for years and years and years yet, I know a good soul when I see one, and I know a good soul when I feel one. And this is why I wanted to have her on the show, because I wanted to put her story in front of you, because this is a unique and rare example. You and I both know that we have seen the fakers on Instagram, the people
Yeah.
that, and your gut knows. Your gut knows whether it's someone that's real and genuine and authentic, or whether it's someone that is a flash in the pan, temporary, inauthentic, doesn't really know what they're talking about. Sammie has lived it. Sammie has come through it, and she, more than anyone, has the authority to tell you that your life, the heartbeat of your life. Someone said this to me today, and it reminded me of you. The heartbeat of your life, we were never meant to flatline.
No.
Meaning not only that we were never meant to pass away, but your life is never meant to look linear. It's supposed to have ups. It's supposed to have downs. It's supposed to have peaks. It's supposed to have valleys. And as long as your heart is beating, your experiences will reflect that. It's not supposed to be flat. That is not a life. That is death. And you are a living example of a flourishing, beautiful life that's not without its light and dark, but you do have the tools to keep the line moving. And for that, I
Exactly.
thank you. And I thank you for the lives that you will save. And I thank you for the mothers that you will educate, not only to make them better mothers, but to make them better mothers for the sake of making their daughters have a better experience in their childhood. You are literally working miracles that no one else could work. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. It really has been a blessing to connect. I love you. I love everything you're
I
about.
love you
And I'm
too.
just I'm just really honored to share this experience on your podcast, to share my story, my knowledge and my wisdom. And, I'm grateful that you see something special in me. And, I feel like I've been in this point in my life where I see something special in myself. And, not a lot of people can say that about themselves. So I really, I honor the work that I do. I take it seriously. I take the lives of other people seriously. And that's what I want. I want people to keep that line moving, no matter if it's up, down, like that's life. Just don't leave it flat. It's really not worth it.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you this question. I ask a lot of people this question at the end of the show, and you are more qualified to answer it than probably anyone I've ever talked to. Knock on wood, but if today was your last day, which you faced this before, but if today was your last day, what would be the message you'd want to leave on the planet?
Live from your heart. I know it's short and it's sweet, but when you really live from here and you allow yourself and you give permission yourself to be guided by this, like be guided really by the depths of your soul, I can promise you that life just has this beauty that you cannot see yet. And like, I don't live in a mansion, I don't drive a BMW, but I'm so content with myself and my life because I live from here.
Mm.
And that's what I call success.
Amen. Amen to that. Oh my goodness. Sammie, it's been an honor. It's been a gift. I know this isn't the last time our paths are going to cross. If you're ever in the US and our little neck of the woods over here in Utah, you have a place to stay. You've got a friend in me. I just,
I'll definitely have to get there.
yes, yes, please do. And we just appreciate you so much. And thank you for taking the time to share your gifts with the world. I know it came at great personal sacrifice, but you're that whatever you're doing is going to reach, and I know you know this, it's reaching 100 times more than the cost it took to get you there. So thank you for what you went through and for coming out on the other side the way that you did, because you're saving lives.
Thank you. It's been an absolute honor, and it continues to be an honor to do what I do. So
I love
thank
it.
you.
Well, friends, listen, if this in any way resonates with you, I want you to follow the links in the comments and connect with Sammie. And more importantly than that, you might be listening to this episode on behalf of someone, and you might not know it. So if someone's name came to your mind as you listened to this episode, do them a favor, share this episode with them, because it might be the last knot on the rope they're hanging on to for dear life. If someone sent you this episode, it is because they love you and they care about you, and count yourself as fortunate to have someone who loves you that much in your life. Thank you for being here on the Marianne Hickman Show, and I'll be looking for you in the next episode. Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We have some pretty amazing speakers on my podcast, and of course, more to come. If this is something that you enjoyed, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I love your comments, and I respond to every single one of them personally, not a bot or an agency. So if this is something you're enjoying, tell me about it. Tell me your gold nuggets. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important thing I want you to laser in on. I told you about the podcast database. You've probably seen me post about it all over social media. I want to make sure that you get it. So here's what I want you to do. Go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put all of your information in there, I'm going to send you the document. You request access to it. Boom, it's unlocked. Once you're in there, my rule of thumb is to apply to 10 podcasts a month. It's very digestible. It's very easy to do. And the database gets updated twice a week. So I want you constantly checking back in there for the next podcast that fits your audience. Thank you for being here. Much love to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.